Okay, but what if you don't want to use colors that are sitting next to each other on the color wheel? That's fine too. The way we're going to be painting today is going to discourage the process of making mud. When you mix two colors together that are not next to each other on the color wheel, depending on how far apart they are on the color wheel, they may end up making a muddy brownish color if they overlap each other and get mixed together. But the way we're going to be applying the paint will discourage that. It won't completely stop it from happening, but it will discourage it from happening. So you don't need to worry about that. So for the art journal I'm going to make today, I am going to be using colors that are really kind of like the primary colors. I'm starting with this magenta, which is I just love pinks. They're my favorite. And this I know from using this paint color that it's very sheer and see-through. So I've also pulled this tinted version. So this pink color here is this magenta with white added to it. It may not be this specific magenta, but you get what I'm trying to say. This pink here is a tinted version of this paint color. And any paint color that has been tinted, that has had white added to it, by nature is going to be more opaque and less transparent. So this is very transparent. It doesn't have white added to it. This has white added to it. That's called being tinted. That's the fancy pants art word. Boy, there was a slip of the tongue, huh? Fancy pants art word, tint. Tint is when you take a color and you add white to it and mix it together. So anytime you have a tint, by nature, it will be more opaque. Opaque means less see-through. So opaque is another fancy pants art vocabulary word. See, if I put vocabulary in there, maybe I won't call it a worm, huh? We'll see. We'll see if I can trick my brain. So anyway, sheer, opaque, translucent, transparent, you can see through it, opaque, more solid, harder to see through. So anyway, so I've picked this magenta, which I love, and then I picked the tinted version of it because I know this will be more opaque. So I've got that. I have this bright yellow, and then I have this kind of a sky blue color. So these are actually, I've got blue, let me move this. I've got blue, and I've got yellow, and I've got red. So these are actually primary colors. And these would be very likely when they mix and overlap, all three of them, to give me mud. But the way I'm going to be painting, the technique I'm going to show you two different techniques that will discourage creating mud if your colors are not close to each other on the color wheel. And these ones are actually, they're not opposite each other on the color wheel, but other than being opposite, they're about as far away from each other as you could get, right? So, so that's what I'm starting with for this next art journal. I've thrown in some white in case I want to tint any of these, but I'm limiting myself. I only have I have four colors, but this is a tint. So I'm classifying this as three colors. I have my red, I have my blue, I have my yellow, and then I have some white in here if I decide I want to use it. I may not use this. So anyway, very simple, just a few colors. So I've got my paint. I'm using acrylic paint. I have a scruffy brush. This is like, you know, a cheapy hardware store brush. You don't have to use a cheapy hardware store brush. If you want to use a nice paintbrush, of course you can do that. So one of the techniques for laying down paint, on one side of the journal, I will use this scruffy brush. And on the other side of the journal, I will show you using one of these cosmetic sponge wedgy things. And if yours is a different shape, that's fine. It doesn't matter. So you don't need both. I'm going to demonstrate both just so that you have two techniques you can put in your toolbox of ways to apply paint that will discourage getting mud. So I've got that, and then I have an old gift card that I will use as a tiny little palette if I need to put little drops of paint on, so I can pick the paint off this palette if I choose I want to do that. Often I just simply put a blob of paint on my painting surface and go. And that's probably what I'll do. Some of you may be uncomfortable with that. You might be more comfortable if you put your blob of paint on a little palette. So that's what this is for. Okay, so simple, you know, pick 3 colors and white. And if all of your colors are really, really pale, maybe you're going to want to have a dark color in there rather than having white in there. I don't know. But anyway, 3 colors and maybe white. Okay. And again, I'm counting this as 1 color because this is just a tint of that magenta. So I'm kind of cheating a little bit. Look at me already. I'm breaking the rules, right? So of course I'm saying 3 colors. If you're going to go have a gazillion colors, you do you. All right. I'm going to show you with simple. So I've got that. If you're doing the paintbrush method, you may want to have a jar with a little bit of water in it. I often don't. I often just use my brush dry and I go from color to color to color without washing my brush first. So that's an option as well. And you may, if you're using the water option, then some kind of scrap to dry your brush off with, because I like to have these not super wet, fluidy paint, because I want it to dry quickly. And the more water that's in here, the more buckling that happens with the paper and the longer it takes to dry. So I tend to put the paint on in a manner that is not adding a lot of water. However, you may want to have a little bit of water to clean your brush in between colors. And you may or may not want to clean your makeup sponge. If you want to clean your makeup sponge, I'm just looking for my little, here we go. This is a plastic jar lid, and you could put a little bit of water in there and then dip your sponge, you know, in that little bit of water to clean your sponge off. I am going to show you a really fun technique if you decide to clean your brush or your sponge off with water. And you can use this technique, you know, in the future when you're painting and you need to clean your brush. Once I've swished my brush, dipped my brush in the water, I dab it. This is this started as a white kitchen towel. You could use muslin. You could use an old pillowcase. You could use an old man's dress shirt. It doesn't matter, right? Well, if it's a man's dress shirt, make sure the man doesn't want to wear the dress shirt anymore, because you're going to turn it into your paint rag. So anyway, pretend this has paint on it. I dip it in the water. I don't swish. I just dip, and then I dab off on this towel, and I end up with this. Look at how gorgeous this is. Oh my gosh, I love it. And then you can rip this up and use this. And that's what I did when I made the tie of my art journal. It is a little piece of this fabric that I ripped. You can see, here's the frayed end. I just ripped it off the length. And that's what I'm using to tie my journal closed. So I'll go over again that later when we're actually painting, so you can see what I'm talking about. But so you may want to have some kind of fabric paint rag that you can then upcycle into your art projects later. I love it. I think it's gorgeous. Okay, I think I've gone over the basics for the actual painting of your structure, whatever you choose to use as your structure. Those are our basic supplies we're going to need. 3 colors of paint, possibly white. And if you want to use a bajillion, you go do you and do that. Either makeup sponge or brush for applying the paint, possibly water. Here's for the paintbrush. This is for the makeup sponge. You can do with this makeup sponge the same thing here. This has paint on it. You dab it in the water, dab it off on your paint rag. So same process. Yeah, so, okay, let's next, unless you're going to just start painting and you don't want to see the next supply list, then go start painting. If you want to see the next supply list, then I'm going to show you what I used to make these decorative marks that I have on my art journal. So that'll be coming up next.